My name is Haley Frizzle-Green and this is my travelogue, Italy, Adventures in Rome and Cinque Terre. This presentation will cover my time in Italy with my husband Josh, where we spent 3 days in Rome and 3 days in the Cinque Terre region during May of 2019. Just a quick disclaimer for this video. There are multiple Italian words that I will try my best to pronounce, but I apologize in advance if I'm pronouncing them completely incorrectly, so please bear with me. With that being said, I hope you enjoy my travelogue and let's get started. Like I had mentioned in the previous slide, I was joined on this trip by my husband Josh, at that time just boyfriend. Before we landed in Italy, Josh and I spent the week prior visiting London and Paris. It was both of our second times in Paris, but our first time being there together, so it was really exciting. This slide shows a photo of us on top of the Eiffel Tower. Due to time constraints, I decided to focus on Italy, but hopefully in the future I can present again on our time in those other two cities. Okay, so let's begin. Josh and I flew into the Ciampino Airport, located right outside Rome, from Paris on May 23rd. It was a pretty quick flight, and a train took us directly to Rome's city center. Since we arrived early in the day, we were able to take in a lot of Rome during that first day. The neighborhood we stayed in was once considered the Jewish ghetto, which was also used as a Roman fish market, and one of the oldest areas of Rome. We booked an Airbnb for most of our stays during our time in Europe and had no issues whatsoever, so I highly recommend Airbnbs if anyone does decide to travel to Italy. The photos shown here are actually the alleyways surrounding our residence. The two photos on the right, also within a short walking distance on the Airbnb, show Largo de Torre, Argentina, which is currently a busy hub that holds the archaeological site close to where Julius Caesar was killed. Currently, it is also home to a colony of cats that are cared for by a cat rescue. And in the bottom right photo, you can see a little black cat sitting on one of the stones. Next, we ventured further into Rome and found ourselves facing this massive structure. Piazza Venezia opens up to the main thoroughway in Rome, and the bottom right photo provides that point of view, showing that what we would consider maybe a roundabout, but what struck me was the fact that there are almost zero lines on the road, yet these drivers knew exactly what they were doing, or so it seemed. On one side of the Piazza Venezia is the tomb of the unknown soldier, and on the other side includes a monument to Italy's first king, Vittorio Emanuele II. We were able to walk inside and go up to the roof of this building, which provided amazing views. The backside faces the Roman Forum and the Colosseum, which you can see in the picture on the far right. This visit actually worked out perfectly because we were able to kind of get our bearings of the city from up here before trekking out the next day. So after this, we worked up quite an appetite and ended up finding a hidden gem of a restaurant. It wasn't very busy. We were able to be seated outside next to a window that looked into the kitchen where a woman was hand making pasta noodles. It was such a cool and authentic experience, and the photo on the far right is the result. So there you can see my big, wonderful plate of spaghetti, and then Josh, I think he had gnocchi that day, but it was a great introduction to Rome. Afterwards, we ended up walking to the Trevi Fountain, where we threw in a coin, and not pictured is the amazing gelato that we got on our way there. Finally, to end our day, we visited the Pantheon, which is pictured in the center here. And a little bit of history, the Pantheon was once a Roman temple and is now a Catholic church. It was rebuilt by Emperor Hadrian in 126 AD. So it is quite old, like most things in Rome, and quite beautiful. In the bottom photo, you can see part of the oculus, which is located in the center of the dome and completely open to the sky. So at different points of the day, the sun creates this wonderful shadow throughout the whole building, but you could see it there at the top. But yeah, that was our first day in Rome, and it was a very exciting one. So our second day in Rome took us to the Colosseum and the Roman Forum. So this slide here shows the Colosseum and the lunch that we had that day. So we got up early and waited in line for the Colosseum. And it took us a couple hours to get through the line, and it went by fast enough. We purchased a ticket that allowed us to visit both the Colosseum and the Roman Forum. You can also pay for an extra pass that will provide you with access to an underground section through a guided tour. However, we stayed above ground during our visit, and I really enjoyed reading all the different historical markers that were set up around the structure. One of the most surprising facts that I read was that the Romans used to flood the center of the Colosseum and hold naval battles for entertainment. So if you can imagine this amphitheater flooded with water and then naval battles just taking place, I can't imagine it, but apparently it was possible. So that's crazy. Another crazy fact is that this structure was built in 70 AD and is still the largest standing amphitheater in the world. So after we spent a few hours there reading about the history and taking in the architecture, we then took a lunch break at a cafe right across the street from the Colosseum. So you can see the picture in the middle here is actually the view from our table, which looks directly onto the Colosseum, which was amazing. And then we had some delicious pizza and a slice of cheesecake. So just the perfect lunch experience. So after lunch, we walked back across the street to the Roman Forum, and entering the Roman Forum was a much different experience. After going through the metal detectors, it only took us a few minutes in line to actually get into the area. Because it is so large, it didn't feel as crowded. And this was probably my favorite part of Rome, not just because of the overwhelming historical value of it all, but because it wasn't as congested as the other highly toured areas of Rome. You really could go at your own pace and just leisurely walk and take in as much or as little as you wanted. And the pictures here kind of give you an idea of just how extensive this area really is. So there really was a lot to take in, and I really enjoyed my time here. So you can kind of see the different angles and views of just one part of the Roman Forum. It extends further than that, and on the next slide I can show you some more. And here are just a few more photos of the Roman Forum. A couple of them are also from Palatine Hill, overlooking the ancient city. So the two in the middle there are actually from Palatine Hill, and you can see that main part of the Roman Forum. And then you can also see in the background Piazza Venezia, which is the monument that I had described in the previous slides during our first outing in Rome. So the photo on the far right is of a fountain that was built into the earth, and the fountain drips down into a small cave, which is gated off from the public. But the fountain and the cave are also part of the historical gardens of the Roman Forum, and those gardens were actually planted around 1550 AD. And they surround this structure and then kind of further go into Palatine Hill. So it was just really neat to see these gardens that are still flourishing from several centuries ago. On Saturday, May 25th, we crossed the River Tiber and made our way to Vatican City. Vatican City was like nothing I had ever seen before. It is truly a city within a city. The two lower photographs give you an idea of what the Vatican walls look like, and I did actually snag a photo from Atlas Obscura for a better view of just how far the wall stretches. Our experience was similar to those shown here waiting in line to get into the museum. The Vatican Museum and gardens were much bigger than I had expected, and it took us a few hours to go through the whole thing. The museum consists of centuries worth of collections amassed by the Catholic Church, and the two larger photos give you an idea into the extravagance that is the Vatican. So each hallway and room was uniquely designed but equally ornate. And so, for example, the photo on the far right is the Gallery of Maps, which includes 40 topographical maps of Italy that were first commissioned in 1580. So this is just one long hallway with ornate paintings on the ceiling, and then of course the maps are all along the walls. It was breathtaking. So after touring the Vatican Museum and Gardens, we made our way to St. Peter's Basilica, which was built and consecrated in 1626. This is a famous site for pilgrimages due to Catholic tradition stating that St. Peter, apostle of Jesus, is buried directly beneath the altar. And in order to enter St. Peter's Basilica, you must be wearing closed-toed shoes, shirts that cover your shoulders, and clothing that covers your knees. And just a quick anecdote about that. The first time my husband came here, he was wearing a tank top, shorts, and sandals. So he was not allowed to enter. So this was his first time being able to go inside St. Peter's Basilica, and he was very excited. And of course, he was wearing the appropriate clothing. So just a heads up, make sure you are wearing clothing that covers your feet, closed-toed shoes, shoulders, and knees. If you would like to go to the dome located at the top of the basilica, also make sure you bring money and not just a card with you. We didn't have any euros on us, so we unfortunately weren't able to venture to the top. However, we did get to go underneath the basilica to view the crypt, which contains over 100 tombs, most of which are previous popes, but no pictures were allowed in the crypt. However, you are allowed to take photos from the outside and then the main level when entering. So here you can see the far left photo is the outside facing St. Peter's Basilica. And that's actually from us waiting in line. So the line pretty much wraps around the entire square, and then you just make your way in and then make your way out. The two photos in the middle, you can see the basilica is just as ornately designed as the Vatican. It's just gorgeous. And then on the far right, upper far right, that is a view from in front of the basilica, looking onto St. Peter's Square, where the Pope addresses his audience every Sunday. And then the lower photo was one of the many public water fountains in Rome. This one was right outside St. Peter's Basilica, but they really are all over the place in Rome. It was really nice to have a consistent source of drinkable water, pretty much wherever we went. I like to stay hydrated on vacations. So not only are they all uniquely designed, but they are potable. You can just stick your water bottle underneath and fill up your water and get ready to go. So that about sums it up for our Roman adventure. Next, we are venturing into Cinque Terre, located along the northeastern coast of Italy. Cinque Terre translates to 5 lands. The region is made up of a string of 5 centuries-old villages that are built into the cliffsides. So each village is connected either by local train or by various hiking trails through the hills. The villages are known for fishing and seafood, pesto sauce, wine, lemons, the list goes on. It was a 7-hour train ride from Rome to La Spezia, and from there we were connected to a local train service that took us to Vernazza, which only lasted about 5 minutes. But here I have uploaded a quick video of our view from our Vernazza Airbnb. So these photos here are our first impressions of Cinque Terre. Like I mentioned, we stayed in Vernazza, the second of 5 villages if you are counting from the north. The photos here kind of give you an idea of just how positioned into the cliffside these villages really are. There are many corridors and alleyways that take you to private residences, hiking trails, or tourist attractions. And so the body of water you see here is the Ligurian Sea. We spent our arrival day exploring the village and all of its different paths. So the first photo looks onto the main part of Vernazza. Some people were swimming in this harbor, but I thought that the water was pretty chilly, so we did not swim. The buildings that face the main road, and by main road I mean the only road that only small service vehicles are allowed to drive on, are mostly shops, restaurants, or markets. And the photo on the bottom is the opposite vantage point, which is from our Airbnb. It really was magical in the evening when the sun was setting and the buildings started to glow. One of the smaller hiking trails that took us up to the cliffside here on the right showcases Doria Castle. This village is mostly set on a peninsula, and this view kind of gives you a good example of that. Vernazza dates back to 1080 AD and was once the site of an active military base. So that castle is technically a military base. Our second day in Cinque Terre, we decided to take the train to see what each town had to offer, except Monterosso al Mare, which is where we planned to hike to. So our first stop was Rio Magiore, the town furthest south. So the picture on the top here shows an almost subway-like walkway to the town after getting off the train. Like the buildings, the train stations and railroad tracks are also built into the cliffside. So that's kind of the view from underneath part of the cliff, and then you walk up and you see this beautiful, colorful, busy little village. But this town seemed much more fishing-centric than Vernazza, and you can see the vast amount of fishing boats in the pictures here. This town had one long road, no driving allowed, that took you further into the village, similar to Vernazza. So the buildings that faced that road were mostly shops, markets, and restaurants. Another 5-minute train ride took us to Manarola, which was larger than Rio Magiore and provided more in terms of trails and views. So during our time in the Cinque Terre, we visited 4 out of the 5 villages. The only one that we did not venture into was Corniglia, just out of pure exhaustion from our previous travels. We actually got off the train at that stop and saw that we would have to climb 33 flights of stairs to reach that particular village. So even though we were young and full of ambition, we just did not have the energy to make that trek. We also weren't able to hike from Corniglia to Vernazza either due to a recent landslide that washed away part of the path. So if you do visit, just make sure to check the status of the trails, because there are times when either restoration is being done or the weather has just washed out part of the trail. But the photos here show Manarola, beautiful city, a little bit bigger than Vernazza, but again, you can see how the trail takes you along the cliffside in that top middle photo, and then you can kind of go down into the harbor and get on the rocks and take photos from down below. And then again, the photo on the right here is just Josh and I. We were able to grab someone to take our photo, but it was really nice. If we weren't to stay in Vernazza, I would probably also consider staying in Manarola. The rest of that day was our designated rest and relaxation day. We had been going nonstop for almost 2 weeks by this point, so we took it easy after visiting Manarola. And this slide here is just a few of the food items that we had in Cinque Terre. So the first one is a variety of fresh seafood, and it's in this cute little cone. And then the second photo shows one of the mini gelatos. I believe this one was raspberry and lemon. And then we ate these little pizzas more often than I would like to admit, but they're these little square pizzas. This one was pesto, which again, this region is known for, but they had pepperoni and cheese. It's very good. And then in Rio Magiore, we got this delicious lemon cream filled pastry made from the fresh lemons of the region. And then again, of course, more gelato on the right. So after a good night's rest, we woke up around 6 a.m. and started our hike to Monterosso al Mare, which is to the north of Vernazza. Before our trip, we did a lot of research on when and where to hike. Early morning is the best in order to beat both the crowds and the heat, and we definitely made the right decision. We didn't pass anyone until halfway through the hike, and even then it was only one or two groups. The weather was great, but the afternoon sun definitely gets hot up in those hills. The middle photo shows me dragging behind Josh. This was at the very beginning, our first set of stairs, lots of steps. And then the larger photo is the lookout after the first initial hill. So this, you can see the full view of Vernazza from that first stop after that first staircase. And it really was amazing being up there overlooking our sleepy village. It's just us, and it was the perfect spot for us to spend just a few moments. And I guess Josh thought so too, because this is where we got engaged. I had no idea, I really didn't, but he picked an amazing spot. It was such a wonderful moment, and I'm so glad that he picked this time, this spot, this trip, and we've been married now for a little over 10 months. So that was very exciting. All right, so back to our hike to Monte Rosso al Mare. Cinque Terre and the surrounding hillsides are part of the Cinque Terre National Park System and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we purchased a Treno MS, Treno MS, or a Cinque Terre train multi-service card that allows you to enter the parks. And the parks are the trails between the villages. This particular pass allowed us to ride the train between the 5 villages as well. So you can purchase a 1, 2, or 3-day card option, and I believe we purchased the 3-day card option, which cost around €40 per person. So just be aware if you decide to visit before you go, and if you want to access the trails and the train, there is a pass that you can purchase that allows you to do both. But here are just some beautiful photos of the trail. We've got kind of a natural bridge on the far left, and you can kind of see sometimes the trail does get pretty narrow, and then it's just a hillside, but I mean the views are amazing. I never felt unsafe. Here, the photo on the top right, you can see Vernazza right in the middle, very small, but you can see a little bit of those colors coming from the buildings. And then the opposite view facing north on the bottom right, you can see Monte Rosso al Mare right in between the cliffs there. And the sun finally came out, which was nice. And again, we've got more photos from the trail. There's just too many photos to choose from, but you can see on the far left is a very steep staircase. Josh is down there, and that is making our way down closer to Monte Rosso. And it gets very close to the seaside. The water was such a beautiful blue, and you can kind of see it better in the far right photo. But it kind of takes you along the cliffside, and then you're right into the village, and you can walk along the beach. It was just so beautiful. I know I keep saying that, but it was breathtaking. It really was. As far as what is located within these hills, I know that we are focusing a lot on these small villages, but up in the hills, you can see some vineyards in the middle top photo. There's also private residences. We came across a couple of small little homes just pocketed into the hills. There was even a cat sanctuary. I didn't see any cats though, but it was, water and food laid out, even little pictures of the cats that lived there. So they're probably roaming around the hills just enjoying life. So after walking through the town, we decided to eat at this Italian cafe, and the outside was what really drew us in. It just looks classic Italian cafe with the vines and the red checkered tablecloths. And the cafe, I think the name was Da Iraldo. And we decided to really go all out here to celebrate our engagement. So we, of course, got pasta, but also a huge seafood platter. So it comes in this little boat full of fresh seafood, which was delicious. And then after we ate, we took the train back to Vernazza. After walking along the beach, it was really the perfect end to our day and to our European adventure. And that is the end of this travelogue. After Cinque Terre, we took the train to Milan. And Milan, we took the plane to London, and then London back to the United States. But it was a great trip, and I really hope you enjoyed hearing about our experience in Italy, and I appreciate you watching.